be, and this is one thing that AI was really a proponent of, was that the code be easily customizable, and that it be read by other, similar to other I codes. I remember when the switch happened back in 2000 in my state in particular. I went from, I did a lot of code checks from my work for a lot of code checks, a lot of visits to the city and county, and I was really pleased at how the I codes read. I felt I could understand it easily. I liked the way it flowed. Ever so often we have an issue with some of the content. It's kind of like, what does this mean? And needed a code analysis done, interpretation done. But I like the way it looks, and I hear from other architects they like the way it looks. The IGCC is meant to read that way. So when you open it up, you can navigate, you can find things out. If you look at public version 2, the way it is now, and we're in a public comment period for it, doesn't read so well right now. But the idea is it's in development, and we're going to work on the ordering and the language until it looks like the icons that you know and that you appreciate. I'm going to skip over this since we've already talked about it. I mean, first and foremost, we put a huge spotlight through on the other I codes because we're sort of creating an umbrella over them. The IECC, just to put this in context, is the most widely adopted energy code in the country. And what we're doing is attempting to beat the stringency of the IECC by 10%. So the IGCC 2012, which again, as I mentioned before, is the toughest prescriptive energy code out there. So just so you know how tough the IGCC is meant to be on energy. So why is AI involved? There are a number of reasons. I mentioned this term before, the design professional in responsible charge. Again, we decided to bite off a really big chunk of responsibility. This is an opportunity. The lawyers and the insurers are going to say at our summit on risk and sustainability on Monday, before holding AIA headquarters, that be careful what you wish for. Do not make guarantees. We will not insure you if you make guarantees on performance, and we're going to have that conversation. But right now, the way the code is structured, there's a possibility that either architects and engineers and other professionals that are working on high-performance buildings are going to be offering more services. So without violating any antitrust laws, I could postulate that that might mean higher fees. But it could also mean an unfunded mandate, meaning that as the standard of care has changed, that minimum has gone up, we've had to cram more and more into that 7%. And that's a discussion we're having right now, because we can't fit any more in that 7%. Something has to change about practice, or something has to change about fees, or something has to change to make these buildings happen, and so that we don't bankrupt our members. We don't want that. We don't want to bankrupt our members. We want more work for our members, not less. So again, this points to additional responsibility, but also opportunity and associated liability for architects and engineers. Codes are becoming more complex, but I have to say, as laws become more complex, I'm pretty sure that lawyers make more money. So as codes and architecture becomes more complex, the logic in my head says architects and engineers should make more money. Logical, right? So we've learned some lessons in the past. For one reason or another, AIA was not on the right side of the fence on ADA the first time around, and we got burned. And for those of you who are around to remember it, there's a whole industry of accessibility professionals that have cropped up, and bless them, they know what they're doing. But architects did not stand up and kind of take charge of that and own it. And we don't want that to happen again. Similar stories on the political side, and I might be raising some hairs in the back of the neck, I don't know. Interior design build, green accredited professionals. You don't need a PE or to be a registered architect to have lead AP on your name. You just need to pass a test. But many building owners and potential clients don't know that. It's special. It makes you special. It makes you stand out. That's a problem for us professionally. We want to protect the practice of architecture. And I'm going to extend that to the professional practice of engineering. Those of us that stamp on drawings and are actually liable for in those construction documents, there's something very valuable in that work, and we're working to protect that. And that's why we're at the table with the IGCC. Preserving the profession, trying to anticipate any significant negative consequences of actually codifying green. We know what was going to happen in the marketplace. We knew that the ratings and the rating systems and standards were going to drive green design in the marketplace to the point where jurisdictions would start adopting things like LEED because they're missing a code that does that, and that's a big part of why the ICC decided to author or to publish this code. But there are other reasons that the AIA is involved. We've made a commitment. We have an environmental policy started in 2005. We're striving towards carbon neutral buildings by 2030. Depending on who you ask, that means a number of different things. But we did set interim targets. We align our goals with those of Architecture 2030, although we don't get involved in the source energy debate. We do share goals with Architecture 2030. This is an interesting statistic from the Brookings Institute that by the year 2030 we'll actually, because of the numbers and the demand for square footage, we'll be able to affect 50% of the built environment. And if we increase the energy efficiency of all those buildings, we're going to be making a huge impact. So AIA, along those lines, with our energy policy and the goals that we've set, we've created a number of resources on our website available for free to our members, actually to anybody. I think you can access them. Like the 50 to 50, it's 50 strategies to get to 50% energy production in buildings. The AIA Trust a few years ago did a study on risk and sustainability. This is a conversation we're continuing on actually on Monday. Probably the largest collection of lawyers that we've ever had in the boardroom, so I'm not widely publicizing the event, but it should be a very interesting discussion. And but this is this is a real reason. This is happening, and architects we want to own this, and we want design professionals and allied professionals to own it. We want building scientists to get their day in the sun. That's a big part of it. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the role that that those of you who are interested can play. AIA has a team that goes to the code hearings, and we submit changes, and we get up there and fight for our proposals, and we convince in the hallway with other organizations, we make deals, and we kind of make the code happen from the authoring side. And we don't publish the code, but as in this list of players, we help author it. We want to hear from building scientists, people who actually know how buildings go together, because you understand the code, and when you read it, it makes sense. You can connect it with your projects. You understand exactly what the code is talking about. You don't need interpretation. You're reading the code right now. I don't know. You understand it. And we need, for building scientists and specifiers and envelope experts and lighting experts and mechanical engineers and all of those that are involved in the technical side of architecture, to read it, to criticize it, to send us comments. And then we're going to get up there and fight for the best code that we can on behalf of everybody allied with architects and design professionals. The idea, the big idea behind the IGCC is that it's a building code. So the idea is that buildings are going to be safer. As a result, it's safer and safer and safer. At a certain point, buildings will just send you to college and cover all your health expenses or something. I don't know. Buildings are becoming safer and better for welfare. And AIA has carbon neutral goals. It aligns with that. You've got compliance. You've got design guidance. Often the codes are seen as barriers. We want, with the IGCC, for codes to become tools for architects, not a book that they keep on the shelf and they don't refer to. Certainly the code could be better about graphics. It could look better. The guides that are written to accompany the codes, the illustrated guides, things like that are helpful. But over time, as we're involved in the code development process and IGCC starts to get into its normal development cycle, what we hope to do is make it clearer every time, to make it better every time. Not necessarily more stringent, but better. The IGCC hearings, the co-development hearing is in May in Dallas. It will be published for the first time around March 2012. Bottom line, IGCC will become a reality long before all architects are practicing sustainable architecture as prescribed by the code. And I should rephrase that IGCC will become reality long before all architects are practicing sustainable architecture as prescribed by the code. And I say that I'm going to come back to a professional practice issue about high-performance buildings in particular. We have an education gap that we're addressing, we're attempting to address right now. Unfortunately, all this can't happen in a very neat, linear fashion. We're dealing with education issues, we're dealing with professional practice issues, with risk and liability, and those concerns. We're also dealing with technical content in the code. But when you look at buildings becoming more complex, and you can call them high performance or green, whatever you want to call them, but becoming more complex, if we are meant to meet the energy goals that the code says, and in the toughest climates, they're definitely more complex. But the problem is that with complexity, risk increases, but you tend to know less comprehensively about the building as a system. We have to transform practice from being highly, highly specialized into people being highly specialized, but understanding everyone else's jobs enough to have a conversation with them and to have those conversations. In some respects, we can talk about shared risk, but when you apply for the permit, there's still a stamp on the drawings, and that person is the design professional responsible charge. And as long as that's a practice, possibly you could, in a future version of enforcement, you could have a fancy BIM model that gets electronically signed by 15 individuals and that all share the risk equally. I don't know, what the scenario will be, but the fact of the matter is that risk is going to increase, professional risk is going to increase as the complexity of buildings do, and we're going to have to address it. And in some ways, right now, the best we can do is monitor the code for any really horrible, egregious things that might go into it that affect the practice of architecture. But in the long run, we want to be proactive about it and say, okay, what can we get out of this? How can this be something good for architects and engineers to build more business, to offer additional services, to offer more value in the design process, and also to transform sort of this conception of design as a commodity. Like, I'm a draftsperson, I'm giving you a set of plans, I just want plans, that kind of scenario with clients that you see here sometimes, well, can't you just give me plans? Transform from that to actually value being perceived about the design process itself, involving all the players so that they see their role in it very clearly, and that when you're going to try to comply with something as complex as a green code, you all kind of understand where to come in, and everybody can depend on each other. And you don't end up in this scenario where everything is piled on the architect or the engineer, and there's no responsibility taken by anything else. That's not what we want. So, speaking of integrated project delivery, the AIA has a number of assets on the website that we would love for you to know about. If you don't, please check it out. There's a guide to integrated project delivery, and there's actually been a transformation from integrated project delivery as a strategic initiative into the AIA Center for Integrated Practice. There are lots of topics here. It covers a lot of area. So please check it out if you have the opportunity. And if you read the code, you'll start to kind of make connections and understand how some of this is going to be important if the IGCC gets adopted nationwide. I wanted to bring up very briefly a case study. The headquarters for a National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado. This is an amazing building. It's under construction right now. It's actually a campus, not one building. Every single one of the buildings on the campus had energy goals associated with it and contractual energy goals. At a certain point, the design team, I believe, had $1 million at risk. There was a lot at stake with this project. It was a competitive design process. And there were milestones that had to be met. And if the energy model didn't line up with the anticipated performance of the building and it couldn't be delivered, things were going to come to a halt. And there was incentives tied to, to the design actually performing. At the end of the project, in this case, this particular building, there are displays that show live energy usage. And they have on their staff, energy police that run around and tell people, like, you know, you have a plug loader, turn off that heater. You know, they don't let you run certain appliances or plug loaders. They're just absolutely not allowed in the building because they're trying to get to zero net energy. And it is so tough. It's so tough. They have, I believe, typical office buildings about 125 or 120 BTUs per year. It is like 33. It's very, very, very low energy. And they're trying to get to zero.